The June sun shone brightly on St. Francis Church in the heart of Boston. Alexander Alex Moore adjusted his bow tie for the umpteenth time, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. At 32, the young tech millionaire was about to take the step everyone had been waiting for, marrying Jessica Hartley, the beautiful heiress of a traditional family of lawyers. The buzz of guests filled the nave of the church, but Alex barely heard them. His gaze wandered over the lavish decor. White and gold flowers adorned every pew. Candles flickered softly, creating an ethereal atmosphere. Everything seemed perfect, except for the turmoil in his chest. "Everything okay, man?" asked Liam, his best friend and best man, noticing Alex's unease. Alex forced a smile. "Sure, just pre-wedding jitters." But his hand unconsciously touched the inside pocket of his jacket, where the letter he had received this morning seemed to burn through the fabric. Music began to play, and everyone stood up. The church doors opened, revealing Jessica. She was a vision of beauty in her lace and silk dress, her radiant smile lighting the way to the altar. Alex felt his heart racing, but not for the reason it should have. As Jessica walked towards him, flashbacks flooded Alex's mind. The day they met at his company's gala party. Their first kiss under the Christmas lights at Rockefeller Center. The romantic marriage proposal at the top of the Empire State Building. It all seemed so perfect, so rehearsed. Jessica arrived at the altar, her blue eyes shining with emotion. Alex took her hands, feeling them tremble slightly. The priest began the ceremony, his voice reverberating through the church. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here." The priest's words seemed distant to Alex. His mind was focused on the letter in his pocket. Its words echoed in his head. "The woman you are about to marry is not who you think she is. She and Marcus Reed have a secret that could destroy everything you've built." Marcus Reed, the name of his business rival, the man who always seemed to be one step ahead, now connected to Jessica in a way that Alex couldn't understand. If anyone has anything to say against this union, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The silence that followed was deafening. Alex felt all eyes on him, waiting for him to say the words that would seal his fate. But the words that came out of his mouth surprised everyone, including himself. I can't do this." A collective sigh echoed through the church. Jessica froze, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. "Alex, what are you saying?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Alex let go of Jessica's hands, taking a step back. "I'm sorry, Jessica. I can't marry you. Not like this." Chaos ensued. Guests stood up, voices raised in confusion and indignation. Jessica's father, an imposing man with gray hair, advanced towards the altar, his face red with fury. "Moore, what the hell do you think you're doing?" he snarled. Alex ignored the man, his eyes fixed on Jessica. "I need answers, Jess. Answers that you haven't given me." With those words, Alex turned and walked quickly down the center aisle, leaving behind a shocked bride, stunned guests, and a future that, until moments ago, seemed certain. As he left the church, the blinding sun welcomed him, as did the weight of his decision. Alex loosened his tie, feeling suffocated. He knew his life would never be the same. The road ahead was uncertain, full of unanswered questions and undiscovered truths. As he walked through the streets of Boston, Alex couldn't help but think of the irony. The day that was supposed to mark the beginning of his life with Jessica became the day that everything changed. The journey ahead would be difficult, but necessary. For deep in his heart, Alex knew that the truth, however painful, was the only path to freedom. Alex entered his penthouse in downtown Boston, the silence of the apartment contrasting drastically with the turmoil he had left behind. He loosened his tie and threw it on the Italian leather sofa, an engagement present from Jessica. Every object around him now seemed loaded with hidden meanings and possible lies. With trembling hands, Alex took the letter out of his pocket. The expensive paper and elegant handwriting seemed to mock him. He reread it for the 100th time, each word etching itself into his mind like a sentence. Dear Mr. Moore, the woman you are about to marry is not who you think she is. Jessica Hartley and Marcus Reed share a secret that could destroy everything you've built. Investigate the Phoenix Project and discover the truth before it's too late. A concerned friend. Alex poured himself a whiskey, his hand still shaking slightly. The amber liquid burned his throat, a welcome sensation compared to the pain in his chest. He walked over to the panoramic window, observing the city he loved so much, now looking strange and hostile. His cell phone kept ringing, messages from Liam, from his family, even some notifications from gossip sites that were already speculating about the wedding of the year that didn't happen. But the name he was looking for, Jessica, still hadn't appeared. Project Phoenix, Alex muttered to himself. The name was not unfamiliar to him. Vaguely, he remembered Jessica mentioning something about a new family venture, but the details were hazy. Determined to begin his investigation, Alex turned on his laptop. As CEO of Moore Technologies, he had access to resources that most people only dream of. He began scouring databases, corporate records, anything that could shed light on the mysterious project. Hours passed, and night fell over Boston. Alex barely noticed, absorbed in his search. Finally, an old email caught his eye. It was an exchange between Jessica and Marcus Reed, dated 6 months ago. J. Phoenix is progressing as planned. A. Suspects nothing. Keep him distracted. M. Alex's heart raced. The confirmation that Jessica and Marcus were indeed working together on something secret made his stomach turn. But what exactly was this project? And why did they need to keep him distracted? A sudden sound made him jump. Someone was knocking on the apartment door. Alex froze, undecided. Could it be Jessica? Or perhaps the mysterious sender of the letter? Cautiously, he approached the door. Looking through the peephole, his heart leapt. On the other side was Clara Bennett, his childhood friend whom he hadn't seen for years. Alex opened the door, surprised. Clara, what are you doing here? Clara, a woman in her 30s with wavy brown hair and piercing green eyes, stared at him with a mixture of concern and determination. Alex, I saw the news. I couldn't believe it. I thought you might need a friend. He let her in, feeling a wave of relief at seeing a familiar, trustworthy face. Clara had always been his rock, the person he could count on in difficult times. So, Clara said, taking a seat on the sofa. Do you want to tell me what really happened? Alex hesitated for a moment, then decided that if there was anyone he could trust, it was Clara. He handed her the letter and watched as she read it, her expression changing from curiosity to concern. My God, Alex, she whispered. This is serious. Are you sure it's true? He nodded slowly. I found an email. Jessica and Marcus are working together on something called the Phoenix Project. I don't know what it is, but they were trying to keep me distracted. Clara frowned, her instinct as an investigative journalist clearly activated. That's suspicious, but Alex, you need to be careful. If that's true, you could be messing with something dangerous. I know, Alex replied, running a hand through her hair. But I can't just ignore it. I need to know the truth, Clara, even if it hurts. Clara watched him for a moment, then nodded decisively. All right, I'll help you. I have contacts, resources. We can find out what's going on. Alex felt a wave of gratitude. Thank you, Clara. I don't know what I'd do without you. She smiled, placing her hand over his. That's what friends are for, isn't it? Now, let's get to work. We have a mystery to solve. As the two of them leaned over the laptop, beginning their joint investigation, Alex couldn't help noticing how easy it was to work with Clara, as it had always been. A small part of him wondered why they had drifted apart over the years. Outside, the lights of Boston shone against the night sky, silent witnesses to the start of a journey that would change their lives forever. The weight of the truth was still overwhelming. But with Clara by his side, Alex felt, for the first time since reading the letter, that perhaps there was hope at the end of this dark tunnel. Dawn found Alex and Clara asleep on the sofa, laptops still open and empty, coffee cups scattered across the coffee table. Alex woke up first, feeling a twinge of pain in his neck. For a moment, he was disoriented, until the events of the previous day hit him like a wave. He looked at Clara, who was sleeping peacefully beside him. Her soft face carried a comforting familiarity, a reminder of simpler times. Alex allowed himself a small smile, grateful for her presence. The sound of a notification on his cell phone broke the silence. Alex picked it up, his heart racing as he saw Jessica's name on the screen. Hesitantly, he opened the message. "Alex, we need to talk. Please meet me at the Harbor Cafe at 10 a.m. I have some explanations you deserve to hear." He stared at the screen, conflicted. Part of him wanted to ignore the message, get deeper into the investigation, but another part, the part that still loved Jessica, longed for answers. "Good morning, Detective." Clara's sleepy voice snapped him out of his thoughts. She stretched, looking at him curiously. "Any news?" Alex showed her the message. Clara frowned thoughtfully. "Are you going?" "I think so," Alex replied, uncertain. "I need to hear what she has to say." Clara nodded, although her eyes betrayed a concern she was trying to hide. "Do you want me to go with you?" Alex considered for a moment, but shook his head. "No, that's something I need to do on my own. But could you continue investigating the Phoenix project while I'm away?" "Of course," Clara replied, reaching for her laptop. "I have some contacts in the corporate world who might have useful information." At 9:55, Alex entered the Harbor Cafe, an elegant place overlooking Boston Harbor. The place was almost empty, except for a few executives having a late breakfast. He chose a table at the back with a clear view of the entrance. At 10 a.m., Jessica walked in. She looked like she had aged years since the day before, her normally flawless face showing signs of a bad night's sleep. Her eyes met Alex's, and for a moment he saw vulnerability in her gaze. "Alex," she said softly, taking a seat opposite him. "Thank you for coming." He nodded, keeping a neutral expression. "You said you had explanations." Jessica took a deep breath, her hands playing nervously with the cup of coffee the waiter had just brought. "Yeah, I don't know where to start. How about the beginning?" Alex suggested, his voice harsher than he had intended. "Who are you really, Jessica? And what is Project Phoenix?" Her eyes widened in surprise. "How do you know about the Phoenix?" "Does it matter?" Alex retorted. "What matters is that you and Marcus Reed were working together on something you wanted to keep secret from me." Jessica closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering her courage. When she opened them again, there was a determination that Alex had never seen before. "The Phoenix Project began as an idea of my father's," she began. "A way to restructure certain companies in order to maximize profits. Marcus was brought on board because of his contacts." Alex felt his stomach sink. "Restructure? You mean acquiring companies and breaking them up for profit?" Jessica nodded slowly. "At first, yes. But Alex, you have to understand, I didn't know how far my father and Marcus were willing to go. When I realized that they were targeting small businesses, destroying lives in the process, She stopped, tears forming in her eyes. Alex found himself torn between anger and the desire to comfort her. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice softer now. "I wanted to," Jessica replied, her voice almost a whisper. "But my father, he has information, Alex. Information about your family that could ruin you. He threatened me, said that if I told, he'd destroy everything you've built." Alex felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. "What are you talking about? What information?" Jessica hesitated, looking around nervously before leaning closer. "It has to do with how your father started more technologies. Alex, there are things about your family's past that you don't know." Alex's world seemed to be falling apart. First Jessica, now his own family. He stood up abruptly, unable to process everything. "I have to go," he said, his voice hoarse. "Alex, please," Jessica begged, reaching for his hand. "I never meant to hurt you. I love you." He looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. But trust was broken and the road ahead was uncertain. "I need time," he finally said. "To think, to investigate. I can't trust you now, Jess." With that, he turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Jessica behind, silent tears streaming down his face. As he walked through the streets of Boston, Alex felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. Jessica's revelations had opened a Pandora's box that he wasn't sure he was ready to face, but one thing was certain: there was no turning back. The search for the truth, however painful, had only just begun. Alex wandered the streets of Boston for hours, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Jessica's words echoed in his head, opening wounds he didn't even know existed. How could his father, the man he had always admired, be involved in something shady? Was more technologies, his family's legacy, built on lies? When he finally returned to his apartment, it was late afternoon. Clara was there, surrounded by papers and with her laptop open. She looked up, concern evident on her face. "Alex, thank God. I was starting to worry," she said, getting up to hug him. Clara's embrace was comforting, a safe haven in the midst of the storm brewing in his life. Alex allowed himself a moment of vulnerability, leaning into her. "How did it go with Jessica?" Clara asked softly, leading him to the sofa. Alex sighed deeply, running his hands over his tired face. It was revealing, and not in a good way. He told Clara about the conversation in the cafe, about the Phoenix Project and the insinuations about his family's past. Clara listened intently, her face a mixture of shock and compassion. "My God, Alex," she murmured when he had finished. "That's a lot to process." "You have no idea," Alex replied, his voice charged with emotion. "All my life, I thought I knew my history, my family. Now, I'm not sure of anything." Clara placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Hey, let's find out the truth together, okay? Actually, while you were away, I made some interesting discoveries." She turned to her laptop, opening several files. "I've been digging through old records and found something about the founding of more technologies. Apparently, there was a legal dispute in the company's early years. An ex-partner of your father's, Roland Blackwood, claimed that the original idea was his and that your father stole it." Alex frowned, trying to remember if he'd ever heard that name before. "Blackwood? My father never mentioned anyone by that name." "It's not surprising," Clara continued. "The case was settled out of court, and it seems there was a confidentiality agreement. But here's the interesting bit. Roland Blackwood disappeared soon after that. Nobody knows what happened to him." A shiver ran down Alex's spine. The idea that his father could be involved in someone's disappearance was too disturbing to consider. "There's more," Clara said, her voice soft. "I found an old photo. I think you should see it." She turned the laptop towards Alex. On the screen, there was a black and white photo of 3 young men, smiling, in front of a garage. Alex immediately recognized his father, younger but still with that determined look he knew so well. Next to him was a man he didn't recognize, presumably Roland Blackwood. But it was the third man who made his heart stop for a second. "Is that Marcus Reed?" Alex asked, incredulous. Clara nodded gravely. "It looks like it. The photo is from 30 years ago, but the resemblance is undeniable." Alex stood up abruptly, unable to remain still. He walked over to the window, looking out at the city that now seemed strange and threatening. "It doesn't make sense," he muttered. "If my father and Marcus knew each other for so long, why pretend to be strangers? Why all this business rivalry?" Dusk was casting long shadows over the Moore estate when Alex parked his car in the driveway of the family mansion. The house, an imposing Victorian structure, had always been a symbol of success and stability for Alex. Now it seemed to hold dark secrets behind its ornate windows. With a heavy heart, Alex rang the doorbell. Seconds later, the door opened, revealing Eleanor Moore, his mother. Her eyes widened in surprise at the sight of him. "Alex, what a wonderful surprise," she exclaimed, pulling him into a hug. "But what happened with the wedding? Is everything all right?" Alex returned the hug mechanically, feeling guilty for not getting in touch sooner. "It's a long story, Mom. Is Dad home? I need to talk to him." Eleanor frowned, concern evident in her eyes. "Yes, he's at the office." "Alex, darling, what's going on?" "I'll explain soon, I promise," Alex replied, already heading towards his father's office. The corridor leading to William Moore's sanctuary seemed longer than Alex remembered. Family photos adorned the walls, happy moments frozen in time. Alex wondered how many of these moments were genuine and how many were just facades. He knocked on the office door, hearing his father's deep voice inviting him in. William Moore was sitting behind his imposing mahogany desk, reading glasses balanced on the tip of his nose. He looked up, surprise and then concern crossing his face at the sight of Alex. "Son, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be on your honeymoon?" Alex closed the door behind him, feeling the weight of the moment. "There was no wedding, Dad, and I think you know why." William took off his glasses, frowning. "What are you talking about, Alex?" "I'm talking about lies, Dad. About secrets," Alex said, his voice trembling slightly. He took the photo Clara had found out of his pocket and threw it on the table. "Who is Roland Blackwood? And why didn't you ever tell me you knew Marcus Reed?" William's face paled visibly. For a moment, it looked as if he was going to deny everything, but then his shoulders slumped, as if a great weight had been placed on them. Where did you find this?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Does it matter?" Alex retorted. "What matters is the truth, Dad. All of it." William stood up slowly, walking over to the window. For a long moment, he stood in silence, looking out at the now darkened garden. "Roland Blackwood was my best friend," he finally began. "And Marcus was like a brother to both of us. We were young, ambitious, full of ideas." He turned to Alex, his eyes full of emotion. "Moore Technologies was born in a garage, as you know. But what you don't know is that it was Roland's idea. He was the genius behind the initial technology." Alex felt his world spin. "So Jessica was right. You stole his idea?" William shook his head vehemently. "No, it wasn't like that. Roland, he had problems. Drugs, gambling. He was sinking, and the company had barely started. Marcus and we tried to help him, but he refused." "What happened then?" Alex asked, dreading the answer. "One night, Roland appeared completely out of his mind. He threatened to expose some shortcuts we had taken to get our first big contract. There was a fight. Roland fell, hit his head. When he woke up in hospital, he couldn't remember anything about the last few months. Alex felt as if the ground had disappeared from under his feet. Did you take advantage of his amnesia? William nodded slowly, shame evident on his face. Marcus suggested it was our chance for a fresh start. We convinced Roland that he had sold his share of the company to us before the accident. He believed it. My God, Dad, Alex muttered, horrified. And then what? What happened to Roland? He disappeared shortly afterwards. Marcus said he'd take care of it, that he'd make sure Roland was okay. I didn't ask any questions. The silence that followed was deafening. Alex looked at his father, a man he had always admired, now looking so small and frail. And Marcus? Why have you pretended to be rivals all these years? William sighed deeply. To protect the secret. If people knew we were close and they might start asking questions about the past, the rivalry was a convenient facade. Alex sank into a chair, feeling completely exhausted. My whole life, based on lies. Alex, son, you have to understand, William pleaded, moving closer. We did what we thought was necessary at the time. The company, everything we built, was to give you, our family, a better life. Alex stood up abruptly, unable to bear his father's closeness. And at what cost, Dad? A man's life? His integrity? My trust? He walked to the door, stopping with his hand on the knob. I need time to process all this. I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at you the same way. With those words, Alex left the office, ignoring his father's calls. He passed through to the living room, where his mother was waiting anxiously for him. Alex, what happened? Are you all right? He stopped briefly, looking at her with eyes full of pain. Ask Dad, Mom. Ask him about the secrets he's kept all these years. Leaving a confused and worried Eleanor behind, Alex left the house, the cool night air offering little comfort to her tormented soul. As he drove back to the city, his mind was a whirlwind of emotions and unanswered questions. One thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same again. The truth, so eagerly sought, had turned out to be more painful than he could have imagined. And there was still more to discover, more layers of deception to unravel. Alex knew he couldn't face this alone. He needed Clara, her perspective and support, and perhaps, together they could find a way through this labyrinth of lies and betrayals, towards a truth that, although painful, could finally bring the peace Alex so longed for. Clara joined him at the window. Maybe it's all part of a bigger game, Alex, a game that began long before you were born. Alex closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the revelations. When he opened them again, there was a fierce determination in his gaze. I need to talk to my father, he said. He's the only one who can give me answers. Clara nodded, understanding. Do you want me to go with you? Alex considered for a moment, then shook his head. No, that's something I need to do on my own. But, could you keep investigating? There's something about this whole story that doesn't fit. Of course, Clara replied, gently squeezing his arm. I'll be here when you get back. Alex grabbed his keys, ready to leave, but stopped at the door. He turned to Clara, gratitude evident in his eyes. Clara, thank you. For everything. She smiled softly. That's what friends are for, remember? With one last grateful look, Alex left, determined to confront his father and unearth the secrets that had remained hidden for so long. As he drove to his parents' and house in the Boston suburbs, he couldn't help but wonder, how deep was the rabbit hole? And was he prepared for the truths he would find at the bottom? The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. To Alex, it seemed like an omen, the end of an era of innocence and the beginning of a journey towards a potentially painful truth. With every kilometer he traveled, he felt he was getting closer not only to his past, but also to an uncertain future that would change everything he thought he knew about himself and his family. Alex's apartment was silent when he returned, the darkness reflecting his turbulent state of mind. Clara, who had fallen asleep on the sofa while waiting for him, woke up to the sound of the door closing. Alex? She called softly, turning on a nearby lamp. The soft light revealed Alex's haggard face, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and exhaustion. Clara stood up immediately, walking over to him. Oh, Alex, what's happened? He collapsed on the sofa, burying his face in his hands. Clara sat down next to him, placing a comforting hand on his back. For several minutes, they stayed like that, the silence broken only by Alex's heavy breathing. Finally, he raised his head, his eyes meeting Clara's. Everything I believed was a lie. In a broken voice, Alex recounted the conversation with his father, each word seeming to drain more of his energy. Clara listened intently, her face a mixture of shock and compassion. My God, Alex, she murmured when he had finished. I don't even know what to say. Alex stood up abruptly, walking over to the window. The city shone outside, oblivious to the turmoil in his heart. How could I have been so blind, Clara? How could I not realize that I was living a life built on lies? Clara joined him, her reflection in the window overlapping the cityscape. Alex, you can't blame yourself. Your parents, they made choices before you were even born. Choices that have affected my whole life, Alex retorted, his voice laced with bitterness. And now? What do I do with this information? Clara hesitated for a moment, then said softly, Maybe it's time to look for Roland Blackwood. Alex turned to her, surprised. Do you think he's still alive? It's possible, Clara replied, returning to the sofa and picking up her laptop. While you were away, I continued investigating. I found some traces that could lead us to him. Alex joined her, a spark of hope igniting amid the chaos of his emotions. What did you find? Clara opened several files on her computer. Roland Blackwood officially disappeared in 1995, just after the accident your father mentioned. But I found records of someone with a similar name, Roland Black, who turned up in a small town in Oregon a few months later. Alex leaned closer, his interest palpable. Do you think it's him? It's possible, Clara continued. This Roland Black worked as a computer technician at a local school for years, keeping a low profile. But here's the interesting thing. About 5 years ago, he started making significant donations to charities focused on rehabilitating drug addicts and supporting people with amnesia. Too much of a coincidence, Alex muttered, feeling a mixture of emotions, hope, anxiety, maybe even a little fear. Clara nodded. Exactly. What's more, I got a recent photo of him from a local charity event. She opened an image on the screen. The man in the picture was older, with gray hair and deep lines on his face, but Alex could see the resemblance to the young man in the old photo. It's him, Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. We have to find him, Clara. He might have the answers I'm looking for. Clara closed the laptop, looking seriously at Alex. Alex, are you sure? This could open even more wounds. Alex stood up, a renewed determination in his eyes. I have to do this, Clara. I can't live with these doubts, these half-truths. I need to hear Roland's story. Clara watched him for a moment, then nodded. All right, I'll go with you. Alex looked at her, surprised. Clara, you don't have to. Don't even try to convince me otherwise, she interrupted, a soft smile on her lips. We're in this together, remember? Alex felt a wave of gratitude and something else, something he couldn't quite name. Thank you, he said simply, knowing that those words weren't enough to express what he felt. They spent the next few hours planning the trip, booking flights and a rental car. As they worked, Alex couldn't help noticing how easy it was to be with Clara, how she understood him without him having to explain. It was already dawn when they finally decided to get some rest before their morning flight. Clara was preparing to leave when Alex gently stopped her by the arm. Clara, he said, his voice soft. I'm glad you're here. I don't know if I could get through all this on my own. Clara smiled, her eyes shining with an emotion that Alex couldn't quite decipher. I'll always be here for you, Alex. Always. When she left, Alex stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her go. A strange feeling settled in his chest, a mixture of gratitude, confusion, and something else, something he wasn't ready to name yet. Lying in his bed, unable to sleep, Alex reflected on the events of the last few days. His life had been turned upside down. Truths that he believed to be unshakable had turned out to be as fragile as sandcastles. But amidst the chaos, one constant remained: Clara. As sleep finally overtook him, Alex wondered if, perhaps, in the midst of all these painful revelations, something good might emerge. Maybe, just maybe, this journey wasn't just about discovering the truth about his past, but also about rediscovering something or someone who had been by his side all along. With these thoughts, Alex fell asleep, his heart a little lighter, ready to face whatever tomorrow brought, knowing that he wouldn't be alone on this journey. The small plane landed gently at the regional airport in Medford, Oregon. Alex and Clara walked down the steps of the aircraft, the cool, humid air of the Pacific coast welcoming them. The sky was overcast, a fine drizzle falling intermittently, as if nature itself reflected the uncertainty of their mission. "Welcome to Oregon," Clara said, adjusting the strap of her bag on her shoulder. "Ready for this?" Alex looked out at the verdant landscape that stretched beyond the airport, feeling a mixture of anxiety and determination. "As ready as I can be." They picked up the rental car and headed for the small town of Ashland, where they believed Roland Blackwood, now Roland Black, was living. The hour-long drive was made in relative silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Ashland was a picturesque town, known for its Shakespeare Festival and artistic community. The tree-lined streets and well-preserved Victorian houses created an almost idyllic atmosphere, in sharp contrast to Alex's inner turmoil. They parked in front of a small cafe in the center of town. Clara suggested they start their search there, talking to the locals. Inside the cafe, the aroma of freshly ground coffee and freshly baked bread filled the air. A middle-aged waitress with a badge that read Doris approached with a warm smile. "Welcome to the Literary Cafe. What can I get you?" Clara took the lead, ordering 2 coffees, and then casually asked, "We're looking for an old friend who moved here a few years ago. Roland Black. Do you know him by any chance?" Doris' kind smile faltered for a moment. "Roland? Yes. He's a regular customer. A very private man, but always kind. Why are you looking for him?" Alex intervened, his voice calm but firm. "It's a long story, but it's very important that we find him. Could we find out where he lives?" Doris studied them for a moment, clearly hesitant. "Look, I don't usually give out information about clients, but Roland once mentioned that he was expecting visitors from the past. Maybe you're who he was expecting." She took out a napkin and wrote down an address. "He lives on the outskirts of town, in a house near Lithia Park. But please be kind. Roland is very well liked around here." Alex took the napkin, feeling the weight of those words. "Thank you, Doris. I promise our intentions are good." They drank their coffees quickly and headed to the address provided. Roland's house was a modest wooden cabin, surrounded by tall pine trees. A small, well-kept garden adorned the front of the house. Alex stopped the car, feeling his heart racing. Clara put a comforting hand on his arm. "It's all right. I'm here with you." They walked to the front door and Alex, after a moment's hesitation, rang the bell. The next few seconds seemed like an eternity. Finally, the door opened, revealing a man of around 70. His hair was completely white, and deep lines marked his face, but his blue eyes were vivid and penetrating. He looked at Alex, and an expression of recognition crossed his face. "I knew this day would come," he said, his voice hoarse but firm. "You must be William's son." Alex swallowed, feeling a rush of emotions. "Yes, my name is Alex Moore. Is this Roland Blackwood?" The man nodded slowly. "I haven't heard that name for a long time. Please, come in. We have a lot to talk about." They followed Roland into the house. The interior was cozy, with bookshelves full of books and old photographs on the walls. Roland led them into a comfortable living room and motioned for them to sit down. "I imagine you have a lot of questions," Roland said, taking a seat in a worn leather armchair. "I'm willing to answer what I can. But first, I'd like to know, what exactly did William tell you?" Alex took a deep breath, exchanging a quick glance with Clara before beginning to recount the conversation with his father. As he spoke, he watched Roland's reactions, a frown here, a nod there. When Alex had finished, Roland remained silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on a distant point. Finally, he spoke. William told part of the truth, but not everything. Yes, I had a problem with drugs and gambling. Yes, there was a fight that night, but what he didn't mention was that Marcus was at the center of it all. Alex leaned forward, puzzled. What do you mean? Roland sighed deeply. Marcus was manipulative. He saw potential in our idea and wanted total control. He was the one who introduced me to drugs, who pushed me into the game. He knew that if I was out of control, William would agree to take me away from the company. Clara, who was taking notes, interrupted gently. What about the accident? It wasn't really an accident, Roland said, his voice shaking. That night, I confronted Marcus about his manipulations. Things got ugly. William arrived in the middle of the fight and, well, he really believed he was protecting me when he agreed to Marcus a plan. Alex felt a wave of nausea. So, my father. Your father made mistakes, Alex, Roland said softly. But he wasn't the villain in this story. Marcus was the real manipulator. William was trapped in an impossible situation, trying to protect the company and at the same time deal with the guilt of what happened to me. Alex stood up, unable to sit still. He walked over to the window, looking out at the garden. Why didn't you ever come back? Why didn't you try to tell the truth? Roland joined him at the window. At first, I was angry, hurt. Then, well, I realized that I had the chance of a new beginning, away from the drugs, the gambling, the pressures, and over time I realized that holding a grudge would only hurt me. He put a hand on Alex's shoulder. Your father isn't perfect, Alex. He's made serious mistakes, but he's also a man who has carried the weight of that guilt for decades. Maybe it's time you two found a way to reconcile. Alex turned to Roland, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. How can I trust him again? Roland smiled softly. Trust is something that is rebuilt little by little, Alex. It starts with the truth and grows with forgiveness. It won't be easy, but if you're both willing, it's possible. Alex nodded slowly, feeling as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He looked at Clara, who was watching him with a mixture of concern and affection. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. Mr. Black, Alex said, for having us, for sharing your story. Roland smiled. Call me Roland, please, and I thank you for coming. Perhaps this visit will be the beginning of a cure for us all. As they prepared to leave, Alex knew that this trip was only the beginning. There was still a lot to process, a lot to confront. But for the first time in days, he felt a spark of hope. In the car, on the way to the hotel, Clara took his hand. Are you all right? Alex squeezed her hand gently. Not completely, but I think I'm on the right track, and I'm glad you're here with me. Clara smiled, and in that moment, Alex realized that no matter what the future held, he wouldn't be alone in facing it. The flight back to Boston was silent, with Alex lost in his thoughts and Clara respecting his space. Roland Blackwood's revelations had cast a new light on the whole situation, leaving Alex with a complex mix of emotions to process. By the time they landed, it was night in Boston. The city lights glowed against the dark sky, a reminder of the life that went on, oblivious to the personal dramas unfolding. Do you want me to take you home? Clara asked softly as they picked up their bags. Alex hesitated for a moment before answering. Actually, would you mind coming with me to my parents' house? I think I need to have another talk with my dad. Clara nodded, an understanding smile on her lips. Sure, I'm here for whatever you need. The drive to the Moore mansion was tense, with Alex mentally rehearsing what he was going to say. When they arrived, he was surprised to see that the house lights were still on, despite the late hour. Eleanor answered the door, her face a mixture of relief and concern at seeing Alex. Oh dear, we were so worried. Where have you been? It's a long story, Mom, Alex replied, hugging her briefly. Is Dad awake? Yes, he's at the office. He's barely been out since your last conversation. Alex nodded, exchanging a meaningful glance with Clara before heading for the office. He knocked softly on the door. "Come in," came William Moore's tired voice. Alex opened the door, finding his father sitting behind the desk, looking years older than he had a few days ago. William looked up, surprise and hope crossing his face at the sight of Alex. "Son, you're back." Alex entered the office, Mowering closing the door behind him. "Yes, Dad. I think we have more to talk about." William stood up, hesitantly. "Alex, I'm sorry for everything. I know that my actions—" Alex held up a hand, interrupting him. "Dad, first of all, I want you to know, I was with Roland Blackwood." The shock on William's face was palpable. "Roland? He's alive?" Alex nodded, taking a seat in one of the chairs in front of the table. "Yes, he's living in Oregon, and he told me his side of the story." William sank into his chair, looking defeated. "I see. So you know everything." "I know enough," Alex replied, his voice firm but not accusatory. "I know about Marcus manipulations, about how you believed you were protecting Roland and the company. I also know about the mistakes you made." William covered his face with his hands for a moment, before looking directly at Alex. "Son, there are no excuses for what I did. I've lived with this guilt for decades, knowing that I built our life, our success, on a foundation of lies and betrayal." Alex watched his father, seeing for the first time not the business titan he had always admired, but a fallible man, burdened with regrets. "Why didn't you ever try to put things right? Why keep up the charade with Marcus for all these years?" William sighed deeply. "At first, it was fear of losing everything, of disappointing you and your mother. Then, well, the longer it went on, the harder it seemed to tell the truth. Marcus had become too powerful, and I was too cowardly to stand up to him." Alex was silent for a moment, processing his father's words. Finally, he spoke. "Roland told me something interesting. He said that trust begins with truth and grows with forgiveness." William looked at Alex, hope shining in his tired eyes. Do you think you can ever forgive me, son?" Alex stood up, walking over to the window. He watched the dark garden for a moment before turning to his father. "It won't be easy, Dad. What you did, it shook everything I believed in. But, yes, I think that with time, we can rebuild our relationship, starting with total honesty from now on." William stood up, tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Alex. I promise, from now on, nothing but the truth. And I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." Alex nodded, feeling a weight being lifted from his shoulders. "Does that include standing up to Marcus and exposing the truth about the company's past?" William hesitated for a moment, then straightened his shoulders. "Yes, that too. It's time to settle the score with the past, no matter what the consequences." Alex gave a small smile, the first he'd given his father in days. "Then we'll do it together." They hugged, an embrace charged with emotion, years of secrets and misunderstandings beginning to dissipate. When they left the office, they found Eleanor and Clara waiting anxiously in the living room. Alex smiled at Clara, a smile that said more than words could express. "Is everything all right?" Eleanor asked, looking from Alex to William. "Not yet," Alex answered honestly. "But it will be." William put a hand on Alex's shoulder. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us, darling. But as a family, we'll face it together." Clara approached Alex, a soft smile on her lips. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. Alex took her hand, feeling a wave of gratitude and affection. "I couldn't have done it without you." As the Moore family began to discuss their next steps, planning how to confront Marcus and deal with the consequences of exposing the truth, Alex couldn't help but feel a mixture of apprehension and hope. The road ahead would be difficult, full of legal and personal challenges. But for the first time in days, Alex felt he was on the right track. With his family by his side and Clara as his constant support, he was ready to face whatever the future held. The night was drawing in, and with it, the promise of a new beginning. The lies of the past had been exposed, but from the ashes of those revelations, a chance for redemption and renewal was beginning to emerge. Alex knew the journey was far from over, but with truth as his guide and love as his strength, he was ready to take the next step. The weeks following Alex's reconciliation with his father were intense and full of preparations. The Moore family, together with a team of trusted lawyers, worked tirelessly to gather all the evidence needed to expose the truth about Moore Technologies' past and Marcus Reed's manipulations. It was an autumn morning when Alex, William, and Clara arrived at the imposing Reed Enterprises building. The sky was overcast, as if reflecting the tension of the moment. Alex adjusted his tie, feeling the weight of the briefcase he was carrying. Inside it, documents that could change the course of 2 companies and several lives. "Are you ready for this?" Clara asked softly, placing a comforting hand on Alex's arm. He nodded, exchanging a determined look with his father. More than ever. William took a deep breath. "Remember, Marcus is cunning. He'll try to manipulate us, to divide us. We need to stick together." They entered the building, the receptionist recognizing them immediately. Mr. Moore, and Ms. Bennett, right? Mr. Reed is waiting for you in the conference room on the top floor." The elevator seemed to take forever to reach the top of the skyscraper. When the doors opened, they were greeted by Marcus Reed himself, his shark-like smile as sharp as Alex remembered. "William, Alex! What a pleasant surprise," Marcus exclaimed, his voice brimming with false cordiality. His eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of Clara. "And who is this lovely young lady?" "Clara Bennett, Mr. Reed," she introduced herself, her handshake firm. "I'm here as a consultant to the Moore family." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Consultant? Why, I didn't know we had such serious matters to discuss." "Oh, believe me, Marcus," William said, his voice carrying a firmness that Alex had rarely heard before. "We have a lot to discuss." They entered the conference room, a panoramic view of Boston stretching beyond the windows. Marcus sat at the head of the table, gesturing for the others to sit down. "So, to what do I owe the pleasure of this unexpected visit?" Marcus asked, leaning back in his chair. Alex opened his briefcase, placing a series of documents on the table. "We've come to talk about the past, Marcus. About Roland Blackwood, about the real beginnings of Moore Technologies, and about your manipulations." Marcus' smile faltered for a moment, but he recovered quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about, young man. These are old stories. Misunderstood." "No more lies, Marcus," William interrupted, his voice firm. "We know everything. About how you manipulated me to drive Roland away. About how you orchestrated the whole situation to take control of the company." Marcus laughed, but it was a forced sound. "William, my old friend, I think the years are affecting your memory. We both know what really happened that night." "Yes, we do," Alex interjected, pushing a specific document towards Marcus. "And Roland Blackwood knows too. He's alive, Marcus, and willing to testify." Marcus' face paled visibly. For the first time, he looked genuinely shaken. "Roland. But how?" Clara leaned forward. "Mr. Reed, we have enough evidence to prove fraud, manipulation, and even attempted murder. Unless you want this to go public, I suggest you start cooperating." Marcus looked from one face to the other, his mind clearly working furiously to find a way out. Finally, he let out a defeated sigh. "What do you want?" William spoke, his voice surprisingly compassionate. "We want the truth, Marcus, a full confession, and we want you to stay away from both companies, Moore Technologies and Reed Enterprises." Marcus laughed bitterly. "And throw away decades of work. Everything I've built." "It's either that or face the legal consequences," Alex said firmly. "The choice is yours." The silence that followed was tense. Marcus seemed to be fighting an internal battle, his eyes running from one document to another. Finally, he spoke, his voice tired. "You've won. I'll confess. But on one condition, I want legal immunity. William and Alex exchanged glances. Clara intervened. We can negotiate terms with the prosecutor, but your full cooperation will be essential. The next few hours were intense, with Marcus detailing his actions over the years, from his initial manipulation of Roland to his more recent schemes to maintain his power. Alex watched his father, seeing the mixture of pain and relief on his face as the truth came out. When they finally finished, the sun was setting over Boston. Marcus looked like a defeated man, all his previous arrogance gone. What happens now? He asked, his voice hoarse. Now, William said, standing up. We begin the process of reparations. You'll step away from the companies. We'll make a joint public announcement and we'll work with the authorities to resolve any outstanding legal issues. Alex added, and we'll try to make amends with those who have been wronged along the way, starting with Roland. As they left the Reed building, Alex felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Clara entwined her arm with his, offering silent support. We did it, she said softly. Alex nodded, looking at his father, who was walking ahead of them. Yes, we did it. But this is only the beginning. William turned to them, a small smile on his tired face. What do you say we go home? Your mother must be waiting anxiously for news. As they climbed into the car, Alex reflected on the journey that had brought them there. The lies had been exposed. The truth had finally come out. But he knew that the real work, of rebuilding, of healing, of redemption, had only just begun. Looking at Clara, who held his hand tightly, and at his father, who seemed to have lifted an enormous weight from his shoulders, Alex felt a surge of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but together they would face whatever the future held. The car sped through the city, taking them home and into a new chapter of their lives. The shadows of the past were finally beginning to fade, giving way to the promise of a brighter, more honest future. 6 months had passed since the confrontation with Marcus Reed. Fall had given way to winter, and now spring was beginning to sprout in Boston, bringing with it the promise of renewal. Alex was standing in front of the mirror in his apartment, adjusting his tie. Today was an important day. More Technologies would make its first public announcement since the truth about its past had come to light. A soft knock on the door brought him out of his thoughts. Are you decent? Clara's voice sounded from the other side. Come in, Alex replied, smiling at the sight of her. Clara entered, radiant in an elegant blue dress. Ready for the big day? She asked, reaching up to adjust her tie. Alex nodded, feeling a mixture of nervousness and determination. As much as I can be. It's strange, you know? I feel like we're closing one chapter and starting another at the same time. Clara smiled understandingly. That's exactly what we're doing. But remember, you're not alone on this journey. Alex took her hands, looking into her eyes. Over the last few months, their relationship had blossomed from a deep friendship into something more. I don't know what I'd do without you, Clara. You've been my rock in all this storm. She leaned in, giving him a soft kiss. And I will continue to be. Now come on. We don't want to be late for your big debut as the new face of More Technologies. They arrived at the company's auditorium, which was packed with journalists, investors, and employees. William Moore was already on stage, talking quietly to the board members. When he saw Alex, he gestured for him to join them. Ready, son? William asked, putting a hand on Alex's shoulder. Alex took a deep breath, looking at the audience. Yes, Dad. Let's do this. William made his way to the podium, the buzz of the crowd diminishing. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate your presence on this significant day for More Technologies. As many of you know, the last few months have been a period of introspection and change for our company. Today we are here not only to announce a new direction for More Technologies, but also to reaffirm our commitment to transparency, ethics, and innovation. He paused, looking at Alex before continuing. It is with great pride that I announce that my son, Alexander Moore, will take over as CEO of More Technologies, leading our company into a new era. Alex stood up, walking to the podium amid applause. He exchanged a quick hug with his father before addressing the audience. "Thanks, Dad, and thank you all for being here today," Alex began, his voice firm. "As my father mentioned, the last few months have been challenging. We've faced difficult truths about our past, but I firmly believe that it's through acknowledging our mistakes that we can grow and improve." He paused, his eyes meeting Clara's in the audience. She smiled encouragingly. "As of today, More Technologies is committed not only to technological innovation, but also to social responsibility and business ethics. We are establishing a substantial fund to support ethical and sustainable startups, as well as technology education programs for underprivileged communities." Alex continued, outlining the company's plans for the future, including partnerships with environmental protection organizations and diversity and inclusion initiatives. As he spoke, I could feel the energy in the room changing, the initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest and even enthusiasm. "Finally," Alex concluded, "I'd like to announce that Roland Blackwood, one of the original founders of More Technologies, will be joining our advisory board. His experience and perspective will be invaluable as we navigate this new chapter." The applause that followed was warm and prolonged. Alex could see smiling faces and nods of approval in the audience. When he came down from the stage, he was immediately surrounded by journalists and investors, all eager to find out more about the company's new plans. Hours later, when the frenzy had finally subsided, Alex found himself alone in his new CEO's office. He stared out of the window at the Boston skyline, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also a sense of renewed purpose. A soft knock on the door made him turn around. Clara entered, followed by William and, to Alex's surprise, Roland Blackwood. "We thought you could use a little private celebration," Clara said, raising a bottle of champagne. Roland approached, holding out his hand to Alex. "That was an impressive speech, young man. Your father must be proud." William smiled, putting a hand on Alex's shoulder. "More than you can imagine, Roland." As Clara poured the champagne, Alex looked at the people gathered in his office. His father, the man who had made mistakes but found the courage to face up to them. Roland, whose generosity and forgiveness had paved the way for redemption. And Clara, whose unwavering love and support had guided him through his darkest moments. "A toast," Alex proposed, raising his glass, "to truth, forgiveness, and new beginnings." They toasted, the clink of glasses echoing in the office. Alex knew that the road ahead would still be challenging. Rebuilding public trust, navigating the ethical complexities of business, balancing profit with social responsibility. All this would require constant dedication and integrity. But looking at the people around him, Alex felt a surge of optimism. The past had been confronted, the lies exposed, and from the ashes of these revelations, something new and promising was emerging. As night fell over Boston, the city lights twinkling like earthly stars, Alex allowed himself a moment of reflection. The journey that had begun with an anonymous letter and a broken marriage had led him down a path of self-discovery, forgiveness, and renewal. He glanced at Clara, who was chatting animatedly with Roland, her face alight with enthusiasm. She caught his gaze and smiled, a smile that spoke of love, trust, and a shared future. Alex smiled back, feeling truly at peace for the first time in months. The future was uncertain, but he was ready to face it, with honesty, with purpose, and, above all, with the people he loved by his side. As conversation and laughter filled the office, Alex knew that this was not an end but a new beginning. A beginning built on truth, forged through adversity, and illuminated by the promise of better days to come. The night was drawing in, and with it, the first chapter of a new story. Not just for Alex and More Technologies, but for everyone whose lives had been touched by this journey of redemption and renewal. The future awaited, bright and full of possibilities, and Alex was ready to embrace it with open arms. Imagine waking up on your wedding day, about to be united with the love of your life, when an anonymous letter reveals that everything you believed to be true is going in reality. An elaborate web of lies. Your future spouse, your father, even your biggest business rival. Everyone seems to be involved in a dark secret that threatens to destroy not only your marriage, but the entire empire your family has built. What would you do? Would you ignore the letter and carry on with the ceremony, burying the truth? Or would you have the courage to seek answers, even if it meant dismantling your entire life? Leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.